Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to welcome you along today and thank you very much for joining us for this webinar about the Council's expression of interest to provide secured public cycle storage in Belfast. My name is Emma Sharp and I'm a Regeneration Project Officer in the City Regeneration and Development team, and I'm going to quickly run through an overview of the EOI. So if you could please switch your microphones off for this presentation, we will do a Q&A at the end, and if you have any questions, please feel free to put them into the chat. Please note this presentation will be recorded, but it will exclude the Q&A. So the application deadline is 4 p.m. on Monday, the 28th of November, and it's an opportunity to find out the level of interest in establishing secure cycle parking facilities across Belfast for up to 8 key locations within the Belfast Council boundary. And the intention is that the cycle provision would be as accessible to the public and inclusive for all. We've applied for DFI funding, and subject to approval, we will provide £30,000 of capital funding per site. Projects must be delivered by the 31st of March 2023. And if you would like an information pack and response form, please contact the email address shown. So the scheme objectives, the primary objective is to make cycling more convenient, secure and accessible by providing cycle parking infrastructure across Belfast at key locations. Safety and security has been highlighted as one of the biggest barriers to more people cycling. So by providing secure cycle parking facilities, it gives cyclists reassurance their bikes are safe and will encourage hopefully more people to start cycling. It also promotes active travel, which is one of the aims of our Bolder Vision strategy for Belfast. So in the expression of interest, we are trying to get a sense of the market testing, to identify suitable partners, to find potential locations and interest in general in the expansion of this project. The responses we receive will help guide decision making around next steps of this process and could result in the offer of funding. So we would like interested parties to consider best practice in this provision of secure cycle parking. How is it fit for purpose and appropriate for the city, and how it meets the requirements in terms of accessibility and inclusivity for all. I've referenced their cycle infrastructure design local transport note 120, which is a piece of guidance we would like you to read through and consider and ensure that you show how your provision could meet that guidance. Belfast City Council will consider responses and initiate conversations with those interested to decide on the most appropriate route of delivery for this scheme. And in the application requirements, we want applicants to be aware we're asking them to be responsible for operating and maintaining the secure cycle parking provision, including any costs associated with providing this service. And you'll need to provide detail in your application on the following criteria, such as land ownership and permissions. Applicants preferably would be the landowner or be able to demonstrate landowner or landlord consent. If the proposed location requires any permissions, including from DFI, then this would really need to be in place at the time of application. For inclusive and accessibility to all, we want to see, as I said before, how their application meets the requirements of the LTN 120 guidance. We want this to be as accessible as possible for everyone. So this needs to consider the fact that there's standard bikes and non-standard bikes, and how the parking provision can take all of that into consideration. We would like to know about how where it's located, how it's close to key attractors, and this can include, workshops, education, cafes and restaurants, and interchanges with other modes of transport. And then also what's the affordability, what's the provision in terms of is there a fee, a structure, is it free? Applicants should consider a pricing structure that would encourage use of the service. And ease of use, applicants need to consider how cyclists access the facility. Is it safe? Is it demarcated away from vehicles? Where's the access and exit points? that's a part of the application. We would like to know that information. And is it in a safe and well-lit location? Is it clearly marked? Is it well lit? Is there an opportunity to include CCTV coverage? Is it close to areas of good footfall, and is it clearly visible? And then how will it be maintained? We want to know about the provision for cleansing and regular maintenance. So again, in the application, the operating model, what the operating times would be, what would the potential fee structure be, management, security and maintenance, and resources to manage the facility. We would like to know more about that. And then just to run through some examples of how it could be delivered in the expression of interest, we'd referred to use of repurposing, of multi-storey car parks or surface car parks, reuse of vacant units or existing units. But it's not limited to that. We're interested to hear more from different parties about what their ideas are about providing this kind of facility. But just to run through some examples of what's been delivered. So this is just repurposing of existing multi-storey car parks using the ground floor for cycle storage. The images on the top right and bottom left are from Dublin City Council. They've been delivering different forms of cycle parking across the city, and you can see that it's clearly demarcated, it's well signed, it's colourful, it's very clear where you can park your bike, and there's they've included lockers there. It's using a multi-storey car park that has existing, lighting and CCTV infrastructure. It's located away from other vehicles, and it's good to see that kind of thought of how you can access it safely away from vehicles, and how do you exit safely as well and move through the multi-storey maybe into the main building. But it can be delivered in a very simple way. The top left-hand side, you can see it's just bolted down shuffled stands. Again, it would be good to see a kind of combination of different kinds of cycle stands. In the image in the middle, you've got cargo bikes parked there. They need a lower stand, and yeah, it's clearly marked to show where the cargo bike parking is in green. They've also included 2-tier cycle stand, and so that's where you can ride the bike in at ground level, and then there's the tier above that you could lift your bike up. Again, this would not be accessible to everyone. It's quite difficult for some people to lift their bike up over their heads to try and store it. So we would like to see a combination of different kinds of cycle parking options, so that it can be used by everyone. The bottom right is a company in London called SpokeSafe, who have a partnership with Q Park Car Parks, and they've retrofitted areas of existing ground floor car parking areas for the provision of cycle parking. They've included different forms of cycle stands and lockers as well to be able to store your stuff. They have an app to be able to pre-book and to access the facility to unlock the door. So it's a really interesting model out there. And then just the idea of use of existing or vacant shops. These are just some images from across England. The bottom right hand is Carnaby. They've just repurposed an existing shop front for a hub. So you can access it through, I think it's an app again, just to be able to book space. The top left hand is their interior. Again, they're using 2-tier, which wouldn't be appropriate for everybody. It doesn't provide adequate cycle provision for different forms of bikes. It's just standard bikes. But it's clean and well lit, and it's a good use of space. It's signposted. It's really clever in terms of the way that it draws your eye to the place, to the vacant shop. Then there's other examples. Trinity Bike Park in Leeds is another really great example, repurposing an empty shop in the existing shopping centre in Leeds city centre. And again, I think this one was in Bournemouth. It's a really simple idea of just use of a shop front through colour and signage to draw your eye, and just really simple cycle stands covered, away from the elements. It's clean and warm to be able to store your bike while you're out and about. And then we do want to hear your ideas on what you're thinking in terms of what it could be, the provision of secure cycle parking. There's some examples in London. The bike hangar has been mentioned. We've had some inquiries about that. I think this bike hangar is by a company called Cycle Hoop. It only takes standard bikes, I think. And I think that, again, if you wanted to park it on the street, you're going to have to consider the fact that they might need certain permissions. But it could work in other locations, and maybe it could be delivered along with a combination of different forms of cycle stands. The bottom left-hand corner, as you know, that is a cargo bike. With its cargo bike stand, maybe if there's the ability to deliver a hangar with different forms of cycles parking, you can see there's some Sheffield stands behind the cargo bike there that takes a standard bike. So it's just to ensure that it considers various types of non-standard cycles. But there's the opportunity for covered cycle parking in that image in the top right. It's very simple. I know that that's showing a 2-tier, but there's the opportunity where it could just be cycle stands. You can see there's a CCTV camera that's been installed to just give additional security. So we are really interested, just for the expression of interest, to find out what the thoughts are on what you could potentially deliver. I made reference to design standards. So the cycle parking facilities must be designed in accordance with the following design standards. The main one that I would refer to is the Cycle Infrastructure Design LTN 120. It's a really good piece of guidance by the Department of Transport, and would be the first place to start. There's a chapter that focuses on cycle parking. I think it's chapter 11. Wheels for Wellbeing, it's not a requirement in terms of, it's not an official piece of designed policy standard. It's just a really great piece of inclusive cycling guidance by the disabled community, because there were elements of the LTN 120 that don't go far enough, in their opinion, on inclusivity for all. So it's good to just make yourself aware of that, because there's some really good case studies in there. Dublin City Council have delivered some recent projects that really focus on inclusivity, and they look really good and are really well used, and kind of a really good benchmark for everybody else. Inclusive Mobility and Transport Advisory Committee, IMTAC, they have a really useful document worth reading through, A New Approach to Travel, Our Streets and Our Places, to give you a better sense of what the kind of restrictions on non-standard bike users are currently, and how we can try and address those through better provisions to ensure that everyone has the opportunity to get out and cycle more and more. And then I've just included, there's further guidance, Standards for Public Cycle Parking 2021, and London Cycle Design Standards Chapter 8 Cycle Parking, which is a good place to start as well. So just to come back of the timeline, so the EOI applications have to be in before 4 p.m. on 28th of November. The week commencing the 28th, we will then start the assessment process of the received EOI applications. We might come back to you and ask for more information or clarifications, and then hopefully we're aiming, subject to funding, to be able to award contracts in December 2022, with the aim of delivery of schemes by the 31st of March 2023, again subject to funding. So how do you apply? You can ask for an information pack and response form if you email the email address shown there. Read through the EOI and make sure you fill out the response form completely. If you have any questions while you're going through the EOI, please don't hesitate to get in touch. And again, just to remind everybody that the deadline is 4 p.m. on the 28th of November. Okay, so I'm going to end the presentation and then I will take any questions that anyone has.